Back to the Unblocked podcast, part of the Unblocked podcast network. Just me and Coach today, and Brian. He would try to join us, but I think he's somewhere stuck in Crestline, Ohio. So, Brian, wherever you are, we say hello. Catch us on Monday, hopefully. And we want to say that this episode is brought to you by OsteoStrong Hillcrest. So go see them for all your bone, joint injury needs. And also remember to follow, subscribe, like, do all that good stuff on all the social media platforms, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Now, going to be kind of a condensed show here, just me and Coach. We're going to break right down into it. So, Coach, your 3 storylines for the weekend. What you got?
And they're all different. I mean, it's not something that I think one you probably know, but Coach Willie Slater was fired at Clark University in Atlanta, D2 HBCU. Willie Slater is recognizable to a lot of people, but a personal friend of mine. He was the offensive coordinator at University of North Alabama when they won 44 games in 3 years and won the national championship. None of those things happened without Willie. Willie was a national championship quarterback at Livingston back in the 70s. Has just had a tremendous career. Was fired at Tuskegee a couple of years ago. And I say all that because I have such great respect for Willie. And to fire a guy 5 games into the season, I've always had a problem with that. I mean, some of it may reflect upon the fact that Willie is very, very old school coach, and some folks just can't handle that way of doing things. And Willie's going to do them the way he's always done them, and I don't know if that was an issue, but fire a guy 5 games into it with his resume, his background was very disappointing. Number 2, Dick Butkus passing away. I mean, you got that jersey on there. That's a Hall of Fame name for you your whole life, but as a kid, I was Joe Namath and my brother was Dick Butkus blitzing me and sacking me in the front yard. I mean, when your childhood heroes start passing, it's a reminder of you're getting a little older. And we just appreciate all that he meant for football. He carried himself so very well his entire life and post football career. So rest in peace, Mr. Butkus. Today is National Coaches Day, and I didn't even know there was a National Coaches Day until somebody sent me a message saying Happy National Coaches Day today. And so again, from my park ball coaches, which one was my father, to Coach Milford Cook, who was my middle school basketball coach, who took a tremendous interest in me as a young person and helped develop me personally, all the way through to all my head coaches through college, high school, all the assistant coaches that worked with me. Again, thank you. I mean, you have to make me the person that I am. I would not be the person that I am without coaches. And the impact of coaches in my life is why I ended up doing, what I did. I mean, and I always said I want to be able to one day make players feel the way this guy's making me feel. And so coaches are special people, and we are so I'm proud to be one. So happy National Coaches Day. Those are my 3.
All right. I'm going to kind of jump into a couple things as well. First off is Notre Dame is playing their 3rd 6:30 p.m. primetime game in a row. Why is this a storyline? Because not only is it their 3rd, but they have the 6:30 game next week as well against USC. And all 3 of these games are against top 25 teams. Not only that, but they haven't had a bye week yet. They're going to go all the way through the end of October before they get a bye. So, and they played in Ireland to start the season. So how long can they keep doing this? We'll have to see. Storyline, keep an eye out on North Carolina. Tez Walker has been reinstated. So North Carolina Board of Regents had an emergency meeting, and they have put him back in. What precedent will this set, and how much attention will it get over the weekend? And my third thing is kind of football related, but more of a personal issue, is that if you have seen the forecast in Mobile, Alabama in the next couple of days, there was a 4 in the first digit of the temperature for one of these mornings. I am not happy with that. Yeah, everyone says, you're from Chicago. You should be used to the cold weather. I haven't lived in Chicago for 23 years, specifically because of that. I came to Spring Hill College in Mobile because I came on a college visit in early April, and it was glorious. It was in the 60s. The magnolias were blooming, and I left a sleet rainstorm in the middle of the night, and it was about 35 degrees outside. So cold weather and me, we do not get along. I will complain about it till the cows come home. That is my, I don't do it. So
Amen, brother.
I washed all, I saw that. I washed all my hoodies earlier this week. I got all the winter clothes out. I'm getting yeah. So I'm done with this. Now people say it's football weather. Yeah, no. So anyway, speaking of college football, so we're going to get into it in just a second, but I do want to say something, because if you're like us, if you follow college football, if you follow college football on social media at all, you've probably seen in the last 24 hours there's been quite a firestorm going on with a couple, with a couple coaches, most specifically Pat Fitzgerald and Mel Tucker. We talked about them briefly many weeks ago about their situations, and now they are both turning around suing their schools that they were fired from, Northwestern and Michigan State. And especially in this Michigan State situation, Mel Tucker, there's a whole lot of information out there recently, especially today, with on Twitter. If you don't know it, you can go look it up. We have talked about it, and we just kind of feel that saying anything now before we do not know all the information, until the courts have not made a ruling, and also until we're not ready to relay this information in a way that would represent our platform properly, we're just going to kind of hang off on that, pay attention to it at a distance, and then when we're ready, we will bring it to you, and we will definitely get into it and break it down and do it the way the Unblocked podcast would expect it to: faith, family, and football related. So now that that's out of here, we're going to do the football previews a little differently. Since Brian is not available to join us, I'm just going to kind of run through the top 25s, not including the SEC, because I know that's a little more of Coach's specialty. So the biggest highlights for this weekend that I'm seeing is 11 o'clock. And we don't see an 11 o'clock schedule like this very often. And Coach, you've got one of those games, but you'll have the Red River rivalry in Dallas, Texas, between Oklahoma and Texas, both undefeated, both playing very good football. And this usually determines the Big 12. And this year, especially more so. Both teams, I don't see them losing a game down the line. Right now, you have Texas by 5.5 points. So it definitely tune in at 11. That can go on TV1. TV2 is my Rodney Dangerfield game about no respect, where Talia Tagovailoa is taking Maryland to the Horseshoe at Ohio State. I mentioned this earlier in the week. They've been putting up a ton of points, putting up a ton of yards. Ohio State has had a very strong bend, don't break attitude. I'm not sure where Ryan Day's head is, if he's still thinking about Lou Holtz or not. We will see. But again, an 11 o'clock game, an early game, the Buckeye fans are going to have to get up and get loud and get ready, because those Maryland fans are going to travel for it. Now, we're not talking traveling like an SEC team, but they're traveling. They're excited for this game, and they truly feel that they can put an impact on this. The spread is fairly large. It's Ohio State by 19.5. But in Big Ten football, we've seen weirder things happen. Then going out west, you'll have Wazoo, Washington State at UCLA. Washington State got one loss on the season already. Washington State's undefeated. They did beat Oregon State, and Oregon State's come out red hot since. So Washington State looking for that Pac-12 championship, but they're going to have to deal with Oregon and USC coming up soon. Danielle, I'm sure you're watching, and you got Florida State and Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech has somehow managed to win football games. I'm not sure. but good for them. They've got it together a little bit. They're going to Florida State, and that is a 2:30 kickoff on ABC. Florida State better be ready, because if Virginia Tech, now they're 2-3 now, and they've won 2 in a row. Florida State has looked a little shaky in the past. We saw what happened when they were at Clemson. Let's hope they can get that home crowd behind them and really take it to them and go. Good for you, Danielle. You got a football team to cheer for. So, like I mentioned in my 3 things, North Carolina, they are playing Syracuse in North Carolina, but they got Tez Walker back. So keep an eye on how that plays out. I'm sure if you watch that broadcast, you will hear plenty of information about it. And I'm sure it'll be all over if you watch the big noon kickoff or the college game day specials. They will probably be all over it. Big Ten, Michigan hosting Minnesota. Michigan is going to roll through this again. They have not had much competition yet at all, and they probably won't till they play Ohio State. Out west, Oregon State got to win. USC, I mentioned they will be going to South Bend next week for a 6:30 kickoff. They're at home against Arizona, kind of a plucky Arizona team. They have played well. They are currently 3-2 on the year. The USC favored by a ton, but USC, if you've seen any of their games, they can put up points. Caleb Williams, phenomenal quarterback. But as we've seen before with this coach's defenses, when he came from Oklahoma, scored a ton of points, let in a ton of points. Their defense is still shaky. If Arizona can maybe put some pressure on them, try to get them to buckle, that is a 9:30 p.m. kickoff. Or I'm sorry, 9:30 kickoff our time. So 7:30 kickoff out west. So, Coach, you and I probably will not be up for that.
I won't. I will not.
Unless Bob starts scratching at the door. So, yeah. And then Notre Dame, Louisville. Louisville is a fast team. They can, again, move the ball very well. I think did they get any respect? They are ranked 25th, still undefeated. They do get affected by penalties a lot during the season. So far, you're averaging 6 or 7 a game, and for significant yardage, too. It's not little ticky-tack stuff. So, again, what's going to happen there? I think Notre Dame will win this game, but by how much, and how much gas do they have left on the tank with this, march of a schedule they've had to go through it. But good news is that we've been fortunate that every time we've had a couple players out at one position, we've had people able to step up until they come back, and then the other players are getting hurt. So we've had a nice round robin of injuries coming through, and Notre Dame will get 2 more receivers back for this game, and hopefully everyone can stay healthy there. But, Coach, I'm going to hand it over to you for the SEC.
I appreciate it. And I'm looking forward to next week talking about Notre Dame and SC, because, again, I come from an era of one game on TV a week, back in the day. And that was one of the games that was always broadcast. I mean, you were going to get Notre Dame and SC and the history behind that game. And again, folks from my generation, that you watched it, because whether you were there, you were going to watch the college football game of the week that week on ABC, and that was the one that was on. So you watched it. So Charles Davis and so many, Joe Fassman, Joe Montana. I mean, there's so many.
Tim Brown. Go down the list.
Mercy. Yeah, there's so much history about that game that it'll be fun to get into that game next week and really in depth talk about it. From the Southeastern Football Conference, and again, I continue to make predictions because I'm 37-9. When I tank, I'll quit. Okay, when I tank it, I'm playing with house money right now, so I'm going to hang in there. That was for Brian, because I know Brian understands gambling. Southeastern Conference, LSU at Missouri. Now, the LSU just had 711 yards put on them by Ole Miss. Missouri's undefeated, but they're basically in first place in Conference USA because of their schedule. And so I believe LSU is going to go into Columbia and beat Missouri. I think an ill LSU, who's been called soft and sissies and everything they could be called this past week, will go to Columbia and win. Mississippi State will beat Western Michigan. Alabama, Texas A&M. I was asked a few weeks ago who's the second best team in the SEC. I said Alabama. We will find out because I think Alabama and Texas A&M are the second and third best teams in the league. I'm picking Alabama to go into A&M and win. If you're going to win it all, you're going to win a league. You got to go somewhere and win a game on the road. This is Alabama's big opportunity. Florida and Vandy. I ain't picking no Vandy. Kentucky at Georgia. Georgia will manhandle Kentucky. Even though Kentucky will attempt to run the football, control the clock, shorten the game. They have a great recipe for pulling an upset. They really do. But Georgia's a little too much for them. Arkansas at Ole Miss. I hate for what's happening at Arkansas in terms of just every week. This schedule is brutal. I think Ole Miss beats Arkansas. And then Brian will hate this one, but I've got South Alabama going to Monroe and losing to the Fighting Terry Bowdens. I think Monroe will win the game because it is a home game. So that is my rundown of the SEC and South Alabama football.
All right. Well, yeah, that Alabama A&M game, you said it perfectly, that if you're going to win and prove who you are, this is your opportunity.
Right.
You kind of show that your instability against Texas at home. A road win like this will make a huge statement across not just the SEC West, but the SEC in general. And I think, Ole Miss hosting Arkansas, Ole Miss can't overlook this game because we will know they are the 6:30 game. Alabama's the 2:30 game. If Alabama puts their foot on the gas here against A&M away and shows some dominance, Ole Miss is going to have to start looking in their rearview mirror, or vice versa. If A&M really comes at Alabama, they're both going to have to go with it. And fortunately for Ole Miss, they do have that win over Alabama already. So we'll move on to the NFL.
Ole Miss beat LSU.
Yeah, that's right. So we will go on to the NFL, and as Coach mentioned earlier, Dick Butkus. He was a little before my time, but growing up in the 80s, you still heard all the stories. He was still a very present figure in the Chicago Bears lore and around town, doing media stuff. I mean, 80s Bears football was just an awesome experience. Watching the fans at Soldier Field were fantastic, and Butkus just embraced all of it, even in his retirement. But watching, and of course, we had more highlights of that all the time. Him going to the Hall of Fame really brought everything back around. Watching him play, he was the most aggressive and angry football player I have ever watched. And you got to look at some Bears who could really hurt somebody. Like Richard Dent, would love to hurt somebody. Butkus just wanted, you put on the wrong color jersey. He was a bull seeing red. He said, all right, here we go. They were talking this morning on the Chicago radio that when Urlacher was really being dominant for the Bears in the early 2000s, Butkus called into one of the radio stations, was talking with one of the hosts, and just one guy said, all I could hear out of the phone was, blah, 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 blah. It's like Butkus just going on a rant about something. And they got off the phone. It's like, did we say something about him? Did we get a fact wrong? Is he mad at us? He goes, no, he just called complaining about Brian Urlacher because he's too fast running sideline to sideline and covering people and not ripping enough heads off. It was a different era of football, and it's one of those things we'll never see it again. But when you watch it and you see what these guys used to do and have to suffer through, and you just hear legends talk about him, and they will all tell you he was the flat out last person they ever wanted to see 5 feet in front of them. And he's a legend who's gone, and he did so much for the game, and he was just a great ambassador throughout his life for the game of football.
And I'll say this, that you talk about being a different era. I mean, it made me think about the playing surface issues that we talk about today. And those guys played on dirt. At the end of the season, their fields were dirt. And how many of them played on baseball fields that were changed to football? Remember, they're driving, and all of a sudden they've hit the infield, and the chalk is actually flying everywhere. I mean, it is unreal how spoiled our generation is in terms of play. We have different cleats for different grasses and different turfs and those guys. This came to mind now. This picture of Lynn Dawson sitting on the sideline smoking a cigarette during a game. I mean, it was
Absolutely.
just a different world, no question.
I mean, and you want to talk about turf conditions? I forget the name of the stadium, but Philadelphia, they're like, yeah, we got this new thing called AstroTurf. They literally had a concrete floor with
Right.
a piece of fake grass that thick on top of it. And you want
Yes.
to talk about hurting? You listen to some of those guys tell stories about it. What is it? Ron Jaworski playing for the Eagles. You say he would tell you his shoulder would just be wrecked, and not from just the impact of the player. It just falling on that concrete game after game. And
I played at Legion Field in the 70s when they had put their artificial turf in, and it was basically asphalt, and it also, in those days, the term running downhill running. Well, the field had a crown on it like this, and so because they wanted water to drain off of it, and the crown was so high that when you were on one side, you could only see the opponent from the waist up. And then if the ball is on the hash and you're taking a snap with the ball on the hash as a quarterback, if you're on the left hash, your right foot's a little higher than your left foot because that's where the crown started. It was unbelievable, the things that people thought were just genius and wonderful, and they just stunk. I mean, it was just bad.
The old Cowboy Stadium would be the thing that most people could relate to in modern times. I mean, even watching that on TV, you could see the crown, and you'd hear a quarterback saying, if you weren't, you could be standing in the middle of the field and throwing to a sideline, but you could be throwing on any field what would be a dart pass just above the player's head, and next thing you know, it's 10 feet over their head because the way by how low they are on the ground there.
Throwing into the boundary, you're throwing it downhill, and throwing it across the field, you're throwing it uphill. I mean, it was, and having to be able to adjust to all that. I mean, you had to. There were no excuses. I mean, you had to figure it out. And of course, nobody's practice fields were built that way. The only time you ever dealt with it was during the games. Your practice field was as flat as it could be. And then you get to the games, and you're dealing with crowds. So it was crazy.
So, man, but speaking of Dick Butkus, the Bears weren't losing on Dick Butkus night.
Right.
When the Washington Commanders put up a Dick Butkus memorial screen, which credit to them, Dick Butkus deserves all of that. But when that went up, I'm kind of like, okay, here we go. And I pulled out the Justin Fields jersey from the back of the drawer. I was wearing my Dick Butkus jersey yesterday. It might have gotten a little dirty. It might have got a couple things spilled on it because I'm not used to us seeing us score touchdowns and take the ball away from the other team instead of giving it to them. And just a lot of different things happened last night, which made me happy. And I tell you what, Justin Fields played probably one of the best games of his career. And even last week, he played well. He's just not on a good team, and the coach just isn't that good. It's quite simple. Everyone's talking about, get what you can for him, get rid of him. He's in his third year of a rookie deal. Your only question now is go through all 17 weeks, see if he's worth keeping around for the 5th year. And if not, say, after next year, we're going to release you, or we might sign you. Whatever happens, happens. But we're not going to, contribute any more of our investment past that without more results. Right. It's everyone talking. The whole thing is it's a 17-game season. We have seen
it's going to be a business decision. It is a business. I mean, and they'll make a business decision on him down the road.
Yep. But I said if the Bears win 6 games, clearly that's bad. But if Justin can play like that and win 6 games,
right,
and you look at, we're scoring 28, 30 points a game and losing 35-30, clearly there's a bigger issue somewhere else.
Sure, exactly.
Yeah. So, but hey, the Bears win. We're going, and they won on a Thursday. That clears my weekend. Usually I'd have some good stuff going on. My English Premier League team would win. Notre Dame would win. I'd win a bet or two here and there. And then here comes Sunday. And just a straight kick in the below the waist. And it's like, all right, well, I'm going to go home and reset. And you just knew it was coming.
That's
But
good.
now,
I got to get you with my buddy Jim Cox. Jim Cox owns Southern Napa Wine Company over in Daphne. He does the
yeah,
UTV 44 game of the week. There you go. Great prop, great timing. We did not plan that out, everybody. And he is just like you. He loves those Bears. He is a Chicago Bear fan. He's from up there. He was involved, I think, maybe with the Blackhawks network, and then came down here when hockey came to Mobile as part of that. And then he ended up just staying and running his own business with his wife and Friday night football broadcast with Dan Brennan. But a Bears guy. He blows my phone up on Sunday about what's going on with the Bears. I am not watching the Bears. I'll tell you, I don't have the Bears on, but I feel your pain. I understand.
yeah.
He's got somebody to vent to, and occasionally he chooses me to be that guy. Get
I,
y'all together.
I absolutely. I got a good buddy in the DC area, from the DC area, and he's always the first one. Just to, whenever your team loses, he's calling you right away. Even though Notre Dame, Ohio State, he's a UNC fan. Notre Dame, Ohio State scores. Hey, look what you did! Look at that! How do you feel about it? I'm like, hey, it was a good football game. And then next thing you know, it's like I got a message from him. He goes, I haven't heard from you yet, and I'm kind of afraid. I said, no. I'm just basking in the glow of victory, and I just want you to wallow and just wonder when it's coming. So I'll get him, but I'm just going to enjoy this right now. But and now, Coach, we talked a lot about players of old. There's a game coming up on Sunday night, in my opinion, the best game of the weekend. The San Francisco 49ers are hosting the Dallas Cowboys. And for those of us, again, of a certain age who remember anything about this rivalry, this was basically the NFC Championship game every year, especially in the 90s. And it was just mean football. And rules have changed. We're not going to see it quite like that, but I would love to. Just maybe like a 21-17 game, just grinding it out. Maybe a little Bay Area, maybe a little mist, a little rain, a little mud flying up. But Coach, what do you remember from those games back in the day?
Obviously, I remember this guy, and that guy right there. I've had that book on my shelf for many years, read it multiple times. I mean, it impacted my coaching philosophy in terms of organizational structure, strategy. I mean, they talk about Coach Saban in the process. Look, the process is in that book right there, written by Bill Walsh. Take care of little things, doing little things right. Don't worry about winning. All the things that go to the winning will hit you in the face. That's how Bill Walsh was built. The Bill Walsh and then of course Tom Landry from back in the day as a young person. The Cowboys were sort of that team that as a kid that you were started rooting for to beat the Packers and sort of unseat the Packers, because the Packers are sort of that dominant team back in the day, and they always sort of came up a little bit short, so you always sort of felt a little sorry for them. And then they gradually went through their run of dominance. And so both teams were very impactful in my life as a young person watching them. I mean, I was number 3 in college, but the number I really wanted was taken. So then they offered me choose this one or this one, and I chose number 3 because Joe Montana was number 3 at Notre Dame. I just loved the way he played the game and followed him, and how his story of being 15, 16, whatever it was at Notre Dame, married, the head coach didn't like him and didn't think he was committed enough to football, and he ends up being the man over time and the great player he became. And that game brings back a lot of memories for me as a 63-year-old man, certainly. I'm not picking your mic up, Keith.
Sorry, I got it back. Yeah, what I was saying is just hoping to have a little glimpse of yesteryear there, and I'm just excited for it. I don't really care who wins, except that except I always like the Cowboys to lose. So, but everyone, that'll do it for us here. We're about 30 minutes, about perfect time. And I just wanted to tell you all, keep an eye out. We will be back on Monday. We've got some guests coming up in the next week or so. We'll start announcing those on Monday. Keep an eye on all of our social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter. We'll announce stuff on there. We'll share some fun clips as well and talk about what's coming up. And again, I want to thank OsteoStrong for sponsoring us here. OsteoStrong Hillcrest. Go see them. Bone health is good health. And again, if you have any questions, comments, hit us on the social media or send us an email at unblockedpod@gmail.com. And if you want to get your business or event on here, we can work something out too. We like money. So, hey, Coach, you have a great weekend. Hope you get some, it's going to be a little breezy for some golf. Might be a little cool, get those windbreakers out. But if not, we got a good sleep in, catch that college football, get on the couch, get a cup of coffee.
Great weekend. Great weekend.
Should be a good one. So, all right, everyone. I'm Keith. That's Coach. We will see you next time on the Unblocked Pod.